I'd never seen anything like it before.
Hello. Hi, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces podcast, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories that they created there, and the people that they used to know. So I've been thinking a lot recently about how your life can just happen to you. And I know that's a bit of a glib, weird thing to say, but what I mean is that if you're not careful, you can just sleepwalk into things, and suddenly you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, how did I get here? And I guess, it's human nature that we prioritize comfort, but that means that we can delay making decisions that are really in our best interest because there's going to be a level of discomfort involved. And then there are times in our lives where we just throw caution to the wind and we grab the bull by the horns and we just throw ourselves into these new adventures, even if we know it might fail and go horribly wrong. And I need a little bit of that bravery at the moment, but this isn't about me. I had a wonderful reminder of that strength and that courage that we can summon when I spoke to the cabaret and burlesque performer Rudy Jeevanjee. And I'll let him tell you the story, but the long and short of it is that through the Cocoa Butter Club, which was hosting nights at the London venue Her Upstairs, Rudy found his people, and more important than that, his purpose. And he would never have got there if he didn't push himself and prove to himself what he was worth. Okay, I'm getting a bit overly sentimental now. Let's just get into the episode.
I knew I was different from everyone else when I was 4 years old. But when you're at that age, you might not necessarily know how to articulate that, or that's not something you talk about.
Yeah. But so how did you know you were different?
Because I fancied the other boys.
At 4 years old?
I think when you're a child, when, I can't speak for everybody, but when you're, I think maybe, I guess, certain things that you're attracted to, not necessarily people, but maybe more like the things that your mother would wear or something like that, or you'd see things. I remember my mum, again, this is not something that every gay person comes into realization about their sexuality by viewing, but me seeing a pair of black heels that my mum had that were sparkly, and I just wanted to try them on.
Oh, basic gay.
And yeah, I guess maybe from when I was 6, definitely in nursery year 1, I knew that I was not like the other boys. The guys would be chasing the girls would be chasing the guys. And I knew I liked guys back then. And I think I have spoken to a lot of other queer people, and they've told me they've coming to their realization of who they were from quite a young age as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. Sorry to make it sound like, what are you talking about? It's just, it's so different from my experience. I just was not thinking about any of that.
It's very retrospective. Obviously, back
age.
then, I didn't know what that was. But looking back, oh, yeah, I remember feeling that particular way or behaving that particular way or, yeah.
So this has got nothing to do with anything, but for some reason it's in my brain, and I just want to tell you this story quickly. When I was 6 or something, the friend who lived down the road, his parents owned a bed and breakfast. And so we could go into the bar that was in that bed and breakfast quite freely, and no one questioned us. Anyway, he was super, super skinny, and he could fit his hand in the condom machine in the toilets of the pub. The hole where the condom comes out after you put the money in and blah, blah, blah. He could fit his hand in there, push it up and pull out condoms. And so he used to do that all the time. And we had like piles and piles of
Wow.
condoms when we were 6. And he, I, and one other person used to go into the field next to our school and try on condoms.
At 6?
Yeah, at 6.
Okay.
But when looking back on that, I don't have any inkling of me being like, oh, this is exciting. I'm getting to see these people's penises. I just don't think that at all.
Yeah. Like, I did have I guess, when I'm trying to think now, must have been maybe 9 or 10, and I had my first, like, I don't know how to put it, because it wasn't like, so basically there was a boy that I used to, there was a boy that I used to go to primary school with,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother used to take care of, he used to come back to my home with my mother, and she used to look after him while his mum was at work. So while my mum was doing whatever in the kitchen or cooking, him and I, we'd be like watching TV and messing about, playing with toys. And there was one specific time when we were just like lying down on the floor, and then he basically touched me on my bottom, and then
Like intentionally or
yes,
accidentally?
intentionally.
Okay.
And I just remember having these feelings of what's going on. Anyway, to cut the long story short, he ended up climbing on top of me and was, yeah, I don't know how bad this is, right? But then he was he was like dry humping me. And I remember it feeling like it wasn't unpleasant.
So 10-year-old Rudy's like, well, this doesn't suck.
Yeah. I don't think I've ever told anyone that, but it's not something that I'm like shy of. If anyone had asked me like when was my first intimate thing I had with a guy, I wouldn't mind saying. But that was the first time I remember a guy having an interest in being intimate with me at a young age. But I know it's probably very exploratory as opposed to like, yes, we're having sex. It was just like, it was probably more just like, I know kids can have urges to masturbate as well. And I was watching Oprah one day, and I was talking about kids masturbating, and
Oh,
basically,
okay. I thought you were going to tell me you masturbated to Oprah.
ew, no, don't. Yeah, weird. But yeah, so they were talking about kids. Kids have the capacity to know what feels pleasant,
Yes.
and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not necessarily about it being about sex. And they had a guest doctor on talking about if you have children who do stuff like that, tell them, okay, if you are going to do something like that, that's private time. You don't do that in public.
Yeah.
If you're in the bathroom or your bedroom, that's when you do that. So this was years after that happened. So looking back, it was like, okay, I'm not like completely weird, or it wasn't like I had some kind of overly, sexualized self at a young age. It was just a normal thing, I guess, that a lot of young children can go through.
So you've unlocked another memory for me here. So this is how unsexual I was. Like I knew that other people in my school were masturbating. I'm just going to say wanking because I sound really like I somehow sound really posh when I say masturbating. Anyway, so I knew that other people were wanking and like getting off and stuff, and there was just no appeal to me at all. Like I just was like I don't really. Like I maybe wake up with erections and stuff, but I'm not very like interested in playing with my
Yeah.
penis. Anyway, one day I was like, okay, look, this is just a thing that's going to have to happen and I'm just going to have to do it. And so I remember I got an erection in the bath. I was reading the Forrest Gump book. Don't know why that's relevant, but that's part of my
Okay.
memory. And I wanked and I came and I was like, okay, I've done it. And then the next day I woke up and my penis was swollen and it was like
Wow.
double the size.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh shit.
Like I've broken my penis.
Well, yeah, but also, am I going to have to tell someone
Why?
that this has
Yeah.
happened and the reason why
Yeah.
this has happened? Am I going to have to like be totally shamed by the fact that I wanked for the first time? But luckily, I made the executive decision to do absolutely nothing and it went down on its own.
Amazing. Well, not amazing, but yeah.
But not amazing. When I hear other people talking about like just knowing and having those feelings and understanding, it just feels so strange to me because it's so beyond my own
Yeah,
experience.
yeah. And it's weird for me because I came into my adult sexuality or started becoming sexually active, I would consider quite late in comparison to most people, considering I had quite an early interaction with at least two boys I can think of when I was in primary school.
Oh,
Um,
we only heard about one.
uh, so basically, considering how early things kind of
Mhm.
developed, I didn't actually have sexual interaction with another man as a man quite until like almost my mid 20s. Yeah, like when I was 23, 24.
Oh, wow. And is that
Yeah.
because you just didn't have any sexual experience or because you were like, I'm going to be heterosexual?
No, it was purely out of it's a multiple of reasons. One, I think, is just having no confidence as a gay man,
Hmm.
as a gay black man. I think, especially in the gay scene, I didn't have any gay friends that much. I went through all of uni not really having gay friends. I had lesbian friends and would go to like queer clubs, but I never really had guys show any kind of interest in me. When I was like 19 or 20. So that's partly why as well. I was a bit shy, can be a bit reserved sometimes. So I think that's partly why.
And so, just like picking up on saying how the scene is very geared towards white, cis, able bodied men, did you find any clubs or pockets of the scene where that wasn't the case?
Not really. I went for years and years not really finding a space, a queer space where I felt like it wasn't just about looking for other guys and it being sex driven.
But you were in lesbian bars, weren't you?
Well, I was in queer bars with lesbians. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Distinction there. Yeah.
I had lesbian friends. I didn't have any gay male friends until I was about 24, 25.
Wow.
Yeah. Partly the reason of that, I think, is because when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I I don't know why, but I always used to get involved with, or I was attracted to straight men. Now, let me elaborate. So, a lot of the time, I would have men approach me that were like my same age as myself, and they would show an interest in me, and they'd be very friendly. And a lot of the times, I wouldn't even be interested in them as friends, but they would be very persistent, and then we'd end up becoming friends. And over time, they would do things that were very romantic and very
Mhm.
suggestive of wanting to potentially take things further, or showed an interest in me besides just being a friend, but weren't actually going all the way, the extra
That
step.
extra step, yeah.
So at a young age, I was thinking, oh, well, maybe if I wait a bit and they might come around or something, and it just never happened. So I don't know why that was a thing.
So, like, how far would they get?
So in college, when I was about 18, I met this guy and we were very good friends. And we would like go to the park for lunch and stuff like that. And he would say things like, I've been thinking about you a lot and I think we're really good friends. And I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, so do I. And then he would say stuff like, I think I'm falling in love with you. And I'd be like, okay. I'd kind of like laugh it off because at that point I wasn't actually out. So I was just like,
Mhm.
oh, stop being so silly. And then he was like, yeah, I really mean it. And then we'd kind of like laugh it off and then go about the day. He would say things to me like, when we're walking next to each other, he would say he wants to hold my hand, stuff like this. Very suggestive of wanting to be more than just friends. And then a year or so later on into this friendship, where nothing actually happened, he told me he had a girlfriend. And at this time, I had actually had feelings for him. I like, pretty much fell in love with him at that point because he was the first guy who ever was like that to me. And I was devastated. He was giving me all these signs of being interested in me. And then it was just like, come back, fuck you kind of thing. And I didn't understand why.
But so he had a girlfriend at the time that he was saying all these things
No,
to you, or
he met a girl while he
Okay.
was friends with me that I didn't know about, some other girl that he met online. And we continued to be friends as well, which is weird because we just had a lot in common, and I felt like the friendship was worth holding on to despite how devastated I was. We're friends to this day. And I'm 36.
So does he know this?
So basically, the girl that he met, he got married to, I want to say a few years ago.
Oh no, and you were the best man?
No. I wrote him a letter. I wasn't sure if this was a good idea, but I did it anyway because I felt like it was on my heart to do so. I felt like I just needed to get it off my chest. So I told him how I felt about him and how I felt, how, I guess, painful it was having to go through what I went through after him kind of being the way that he was to me, in a way that wasn't too argumentative, or I didn't want to come across like I wanted to blame him for anything.
Yeah.
But anyway, he responded really nicely, and he was just like basically saying, I'm so sorry that you went through that, and I'm sorry if I did whatever. And there was a bit of closure there. I still feel like I'm like going through that. I was talking to one of my best friends about this. It's been so many years, and he's the one person that I still have this, like, there's this feeling of something unresolved within me anyway. Yeah, because most other guys that I've gone out with or had an interaction with in that kind of way, I've managed to kind of like get over it and kind of put them to the side. But I think maybe because he was the first guy that I had an interaction with, he was the first guy to ever like be so nice to me.
Oh, other humans can really fuck us up, can't they?
Yeah. And that happened at least a couple times with other guys as well, like guys that were...
Yeah, I was going to say, because you talked about that, like that you had a thing, you called it a thing with straight guys. So it happened again and again.
It happened a good few times where guys would show what felt like platonic interest in me, and their actions showed otherwise. And then I'd be waiting to see if they would make the next step, and it wouldn't happen. And I felt like I was dangling, having developed feelings for this particular person, and it's kind of just not really going anywhere. So that happened, I want to say, from like my late teens to my early 20s. So I was invested in these guys, thinking that they would somehow, I don't know, I thought like, oh, maybe they're straight and they're going to tell me they love me and they're going to come out to me and going to say, actually, you know, I want to be with you or something like that. That was kind of what I was thinking. Not that I was like forcefully wanting that, pushing my idea on them, but that's how it was perceived. And when I spoke to my friends and other people about it, they'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds very like they're interested in you. Like if they did that to anyone else, I'm sure they would think the same thing as well.
But what a head fuck as well, especially because the way you've described it is they were the ones that did the chasing in the first place, but then they just never saw it through.
Yeah.
That's annoying. That's so annoying. Fuck them.
The first guy, the one who I went to college with, he went to the same uni as well. And he gave me a Valentine's Day card. He gave me like flowers. He gave me like a rose in the middle of the university courtyard, got on one knee and gave me a flower and was like, Happy Valentine's Day. Like really fucked up shit that you just think this guy obviously has an interest in me, and then
I think you're reading too much into that, to be honest. I mean, you know, people get on their knees and give flowers to their platonic, their bros, yeah. Oh God, how annoying.
Right. So it made me feel some kind of way about myself. Like, what's going on with me? It must be me. I must be the one who's doing something wrong. It took me a while to realize that it wasn't me and it was them being weird.
Yeah. But what do you think it is about you that attracted them?
Well, from what I've been told, I've got quite a calm nature. So a lot of guys, I don't know, for that reason, think that I'm just a cool person to hang out with and talk to. They see me as someone who's quite transparent. They see me as someone who they can be themselves around. Another guy who I used to work with, who I felt showed interest in me, he was very like lad's lad kind of guy. And like, when he's with the other straight guys, he's very
Hmm.
boisterous and whatever. But when he was with me, he'd kind of be very chill. He would just tell me all his problems, everything that he wanted to say, he would tell me. And I think he liked that. He liked that he could talk to someone who wasn't going to judge him for anything, regardless of if he was gay or not or whatever. That was something obviously that he liked, being able to connect with me in that kind of way. I don't know.
But so you had a number of recurring situations where you more or less fell in love.
Yeah.
You got those warm, squishy feelings
Yeah.
that form when you start to fall in love, but you didn't actually get to then do any of the fun and messy
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
And we got here because you didn't have any gay friends up until you were about 24.
Yes.
And so did you just not, like, I am, a fellow recovering shy person, so I'm not saying this in any kind
Yeah.
of judgmental way, but did you not make any effort when you were in those queer spaces with your lesbian friends to make friends?
So that was for a very limited time. So that
Uh-huh,
was
okay.
like uni time. And when during uni time, I was trying to just do my work and also I was still discovering who I was as well. And you can go out to these places and, you might get like a guy look at you or whatever, but nothing ever kind of went through. So I guess also I was just a bit shy as well. So I made efforts as and when I could, but it's not like me, I guess, to be fully forward with a guy in a club.
Yeah.
And I started going to gay clubs through work because I used to work in Topshop in Oxford Circus, and pretty much all the staff there are gay. So I was going to clubs up with colleagues after work and on the weekends, and that's when my eyes were open to the gay world and the gay club scene with gay men, and not just going once or twice with
Okay.
my lesbian pals. So yeah, I started going to places like Heaven and GAY Bar and Late, and it was interesting. It was like, wow, this I'm like living the gay life. This is what it's like all about. And I guess when you are in those spaces, there is this element of trying to scope and see who you can hook up with or who you might be interested. Everyone's kind of got their eyes looking on someone, and nothing really happened then either. And that's when I realized that, oh, maybe, I know it sounds really sad, but maybe I'm just not attractive enough. Maybe I'm just not what people are looking for, whatever. And everything just felt very superficial. For me, it just didn't feel genuine enough or sincere enough to just meet someone based on you being drunk or tipsy and fancying them and then going off with them. It just didn't feel like that's something that I personally move forward into with someone. In terms of meeting someone, I don't really see that as something that worked for me anyway. It just didn't work for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
So I just took it as what it was.
But was it that people were hitting on you and you were turning them down, or people just weren't hitting on you?
Yeah, people weren't hitting on me.
Okay.
Not that I can remember at all, no.
See, because for me, I think when I was going clubbing and doing that, like looking at people on the dance floor and like sussing out the scene and what was going on, I think my problem was that I was always looking for a husband. I wasn't looking for a hookup, and I didn't really like. I sound so naive in this conversation. I didn't really understand. Obviously, I knew people who like had sex and then never spoke to each other again, but I didn't really
Yeah.
understand hookup culture at that point. And I always thought that if you were going to hook up with someone, then something else would flow out of that. That you would then either like become friends or that you would like have a relationship
Yeah.
from there. And I think people kind of just thought I was too intense, I suppose.
Okay.
And so I kind of got overlooked a lot as
I
well.
definitely understand that point you made. I wasn't about the hookup culture, even though I never actively thought about it. I thought that maybe when you do meet someone, you would become friends at the very least, maybe. It wasn't obvious to me that people just hooked up and then never spoke to each other again. It wasn't at the forefront of my mind when it came to going to these spaces.
Yeah, it's so weird, isn't it? I feel like there needs to be like a pamphlet when you go in It's like, by the way, some people might just want to fuck you and then never
Right.
talk to you again. Be
Yeah.
aware of that. Because there's no real other way of
No.
learning that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll write that down. I'll make a suggestion to all my local queer bars. These are the things you should be aware of whilst you're a patron here. Okay, so let's talk about what we're here to talk about, clubbing and being out. You'd started to really throw yourself into the scene when you were like 24,
Yeah.
25 and working at Topshop.
Yeah.
What do you remember of the scene from that time?
I just remember, for me, it felt very exciting coming into this new space with friends. And I'd been to small clubs in East London, these kind of smaller, intimate places. And then I went to Heaven, which was kind of like the first time I'd been to like a big, massive place where there were loads of gays. That felt, or yeah, well, there were lesbians there as well, like queer people. But actually, to be honest, to me, there's a difference between queer culture and gay culture. And I feel like Heaven is very gay culture. It's not very
Yeah.
queer, but when I was there, yes, there were other people of the queer spectrum there.
I'm going to stop you
Um,
very quickly because you've just ignited one of my favorite things to talk about, and it's language. So you've said that queer culture and gay culture are different.
yes.
Can you expand on that?
I feel like queer culture is more inclusive. Gay culture isn't. in the different categories, because obviously there's loads of different types of gays, and I feel like in gay spaces there's less of a sense of community,
Ah,
inclusive, where everyone is in a space where everyone is thriving and everyone feels accepted. I don't feel that back then anyway. Looking back retrospectively, there wasn't much of that going on. Of course, I'm new to it all, so I'm thinking, yeah, it's amazing. But looking back, thinking, oh, there wasn't actually much room for anyone else or anything else besides just being gay. Yeah, for me, it was important that I got to experience being in a place that was just about gay men, because I am a gay man.
yeah.
So I'm not trying to like shit on gay men.
I mean, it's just us here. You can't. Come on.
So I'm grateful that there were spaces for me to go, but then I realized I was outgrowing that. I was outgrowing it just being about that.
And so, do you think you can belong to both queer culture and gay culture at the same time? Or do you need to pick a side?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can. I think, as people, we always, I guess it depends on the intention, but you can switch up who, not to say that you're being fake, but you can switch up who you are depending on who you're with.
Yeah. 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 Because they bring out different sides of you.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I cut you off. So GAY, it was the first time you'd ever been surrounded by that many
Yeah.
gays.
And it was, like I said, it was fun. It was nice for the first time being in a space where I felt like I could be myself. As time went on, I realized that there was more to myself than what that space was offering me. And then it started to feel quite stale being in those spaces sometimes. I feel like I don't know if I should be saying this because I'm a performer and performers perform at places like Heaven and GOI. But at the time, being a black gay man, I felt like there weren't many spaces, I didn't see many POC people in places like Heaven and GOI. And I think that is very important as well, to see a reflection of yourself in the spaces, in the queer spaces that you're hanging out in.
So is that the more that you were looking for, or were there other elements?
Um, yes, that was the other parts that I was looking for.
And so where did you go to find it?
Well, the first time that I experienced being in a space that felt like it wasn't just about gay men, but queerness, was in a venue called Her Upstairs in Camden. The first time I went there, I went to see a cabaret show with the Cocoa Butter Club, which is a POC slash queer collective of performers. So it was like, wow, like it, not only was it not just about partying, but it was a space to watch performance as well from your fellow queer people. So that was really interesting, and it felt more intimate as well, and the energy felt more. I was gonna say it's not calm. It just felt less superficial. It felt there was something about that space that felt like all was welcome, and that was different. It was a different feeling, and I really liked that.
Mm-hmm. So talk me through this first night then. Who did you go with?
So I went with my best friend, my gay best friend, who I met at Topshop,
Oh,
and
but there's a distinction because there's a best friend and a gay best friend.
yes. So in fact, maybe I just want to backtrack a bit. So I've always wanted to perform. I like to sing, and I just never had the confidence to do so. And it's always been that thing that I've just struggled with. I always had like stage fright, but I like to sing. So one day I was on YouTube and I was watching a BBC Three series called Queer Britain,
Mm-hmm.
and they had like every episode spoke about something different about the queer scene. And in one episode, they spoke about POC people and queerness. And towards the end of the episode, they highlighted the Cocoa Butter Club, which is, like I said, a queer
Mm-hmm.
cabaret collective. And I saw Sadie Sinner, who is the founder of the Cocoa Butter Club, and she's basically talking about what it stood for and why she's made the Cocoa Butter Club. And I was just completely inspired by all the performers that were being featured. And I felt like, wow, this is exactly what I need. This is what, because I felt like there was no other way I'd be able to get into the performance industry with no like formal training whatsoever.
So you were going there with a plan then?
Yeah, well, yeah. There was an intention behind going besides just wanting to see a show. Yeah.
So then, what are the feelings of sitting down and watching that show after seeing it on TV?
It was just really inspiring. It was just nice seeing other people and bodies that looked like myself doing like cabaret and doing burlesque and doing poetry and doing all these different types of things. I'd never seen anything like it before because I
Mm-hmm.
guess before I felt like these are only things that were in, I guess, certain spaces that maybe were predominantly white, or you had to be a professional or have to have done, X, Y, and Z for a certain amount of years. But this
Mm-hmm.
space invited people who were not only in the industry for a while, but also people who were new and wanted to try and do something different and express themselves in a new way.
Mm-hmm.
A part of me was just speechless, but yet at the same time, my heart was just feeling so full of joy, and you could
Mm.
feel it in the room as well.
And so, what happened next? Did you pluck up the bravery to go and talk to someone about maybe performing
Well,
yourself?
yes. So I think at the time I messaged Sadie Sinner, and let me get my timelines right. I think I messaged them first and said I'm interested. I said I saw your short segment on Queer Britain. It's
Mm-hmm.
really inspired me. I want to like do burlesque and sing. I was wondering maybe if I could, do a segment with you guys. And then she was like, sure, that's absolutely fine. Come on down. And I think she invited me to watch a show first to see what it was about. So that's when I went and saw
Ah,
what it was about.
okay.
Yeah.
So you saw the show and you were like, yes,
Yes.
this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and I'm going to give them the old Rudy razzle dazzle and let them know what's up. And you started putting a piece together.
Yes.
And let's imagine that it's 9 a.m. on the day that you're going to do that performance. What thoughts are running through your head?
Trying to think now. I don't know. Looking back, obviously I was nervous. Also, to add, I was doing two acts. I was doing a burlesque routine and I was singing. So I was actually more nervous about the singing because
Hmm.
doing burlesque was actually something that I decided to do to gain enough confidence so I could sing.
Ah, yeah.
For some reason, I felt like going on stage and stripping off my clothes was less frightening than singing to a bunch of people because you don't have to say anything. I feel like singing, there's an element of being a bit more vulnerable because you have to be good with singing. You can't hide behind anything when you're singing. That's why burlesque, when I started doing striptease and burlesque, that really helped me get over my stage fright. It really helped me to embody a different persona so that when I'm on stage, all of that fear just like melts away. And I was
Hmm.
able to then transfer that to my singing persona, I guess, or apply that to myself when I'm singing. And yeah, it helped a lot. It helped a lot.
So that morning, then, what's going through your head?
Um, I can't specifically think what I was thinking that morning,
Uh,
but I think mostly excitement. I'm thinking probably the excitement of having a chance to finally get out what has been like held within me for so long.
mm.
It's my moment to begin to show who I truly am.
So do you think that that's what performing does? Allow you to show who you really are?
Yes, another side of who you are.
Uh-huh.
I think after a while, those different sides can bleed into each other, or maybe it's all one thing and different parts of the same thing. Yeah, I think it just helps to maybe release. I hear that from a lot of performers anyway.
With that in mind, do you feel that you didn't show yourself until you started performing?
Yes.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah. Looking back, a few years before I started performing, I was in a very toxic relationship, and it really dealt some damage to me in terms of my confidence and how I saw myself. And I really needed something to like pick myself up with and to not only prove to others but myself, what I was made of,
Mm.
to prove to myself that there was something more to my life than what I was feeling at the time. I felt caged and I just felt stifled, and performance was what I needed to bust down the doors, really.
So how did that first performance go?
It went really well. There were so many people that were so kind to me after the show, telling me how good I was and how for both the burlesque act and for the singing act. It was really overwhelming. Yeah, I just remember feeling very okay, I can do this. I've done it once now. I've gotten really good feedback. This is it. I'm gonna continue going with this now. There wasn't any like, oh, that's done
Mm.
now. That was nice. It was like, no, I've got to continue doing this.
I was like, I
I
need
need
more of
more of
this.
this.
Yeah. And that was all thanks to her upstairs.
Yeah, really. Most definitely. Yeah.
Mm. Well, and so did you continue performing in that space?
Yeah, so I did a good few performances there whilst it was still open. I think I was lucky enough to have been there, I think a year before it closed down, something like that. If I came into this any later, I might have not had the experience of performing there. But whilst I was there, I did a good few shows with the Cocoa Butter Club.
Mm.
And yeah, it was just an amazing space. It's where I discovered myself.
Hmm. Well, so do you remember hearing about it closing down?
It happened very quickly, to be honest. I was
Hmm.
there doing a photo shoot for Time Out magazine with the Cocoa Butter Club, and then a couple of weeks later, everyone's saying that it's closing down. There wasn't like, oh, it's a closing down party or anything like that. It was just like something fell through, something happened, and then it was a shut. So it was just a very abrupt
Hmm.
closing.
So do you remember how you felt when you heard?
I remember feeling a bit, I don't know, there's like disappointment I felt because the word hadn't gotten out for us to like do anything like a closing down party or something like that. I was feeling like, yeah, I don't know why. That's the first thing I could think of. Of course, I was sad that the first venue that I worked at was closing down. But I think there was no closure for a lot of people that performed
Mm.
there. And I think that was a bit frustrating.
Mm.
It always just seemed like an iconic place to be for
Mm.
everybody. And yeah, it was just definitely a shame that it closed down without a proper send off.
Mm. And if we could jump in a time machine and go back to the first Cocoa Butter Club night that you went to with your gay best friend, if you had a chance to speak to the you of that time and give some advice to him, what would you say?
I don't think I would give advice. I think, if anything, I would thank that version of myself for having enough bravery to actually do what we needed to do, for having the courage to
Mm.
step out of your comfort zone, to embrace a part of yourself that you didn't think that you could embrace. I'd say to him, you're doing a really good job and continue doing what you're doing.
Do you have any memories of her upstairs that you want to share? Or maybe you've got some stories from your own queer scene that you're dying to share with somebody? Well, if that's the case, if either of those are the case, why not get in touch? I want to create the biggest online record of people's memories and stories of queer clubbing, but I can't do it alone and I need your help. Go to lostspacespodcast.com, find the section Share a Lost Space, and then tell me all about what it is you got up to. I would love to hear from you. And if that's a step too far, you're not quite ready to commit to a whole story, why not just say hello on social media? You can find me at Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, where my handle is Lost Spaces Pod. Whilst you're there, why not find out more about Rudy by following him on Instagram at Rudy Jeevanjee. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate if you took the time to subscribe, leave a review on your podcast platform of choice, or just tell other people who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. My name is Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.